that is the world right now. He wasn't feeling so hot, so it made sense for him to just not come and be in person. Shannon Phillips is an assistant strength and conditioning coach on our staff, a little bit newer on staff, and Mccourt is a graduate student, maybe a classmate of yours, but she is with our staff, and then Sachin as well. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
People in the back we get? And Sachin is the newest addition to our crew, and we'll dig into this a little bit more in a little bit, but our area is in charge of a lot of things, and we all play different parts, so we'll explain those as we go through here. So our staff as a whole and who we serve, so right, we are internal and we are hands-on with the student athletes day to day with the different teams that we are allotted to. So our staff, we cover 15 sports. So we're deemed after the Olympic sports. So that's all of the sports minus football and the basketballs. They are their own entities, but all of us, we all fall under one umbrella. Serving the student athletes. There are roughly that we cover 375 student athletes that we serve. There are 6 full-time staff members. So myself, Coach Shannon, and 4 other individuals that are full-time staff members. Under that, we have 2 graduate assistants. So we'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit as we make our way through. But 2 graduate assistants that come out of our budget. So between athletics and academics and the way that we're able to create support around our department and our student athletes, our teams. 2 that are essentially strength and conditioning coaches that have come through. They operate as full-time staff members with our crew, but realizing they're also going to, they're taking classes, they're working on their master's degrees, so therefore their workload is typically just a little bit lighter from our expectations. We create a little bit more support around them, but definitely extremely helpful, valuable individuals on our team. There are also 4 graduate / professional interns that help us out on the day-to-day basis. But with that, their funding comes from a different source. But if they're interested in being part of the world of athletic performance, particularly in the area of strength and conditioning, it makes sense to get experience with that. So they reach out and volunteer their time, their services to create those relationships, build those recommendations, be able to be hands-on and get practice reps in working hands-on with our student athletes. So we have 1 individual who's from the sports management program, so that fluxes from year to year. Typically we have the graduate students either come from sports management or sports sciences. It depends on the year, how many, like what are you guys interested, is this something that you want to do? Well, then there's more from sport management, and then also more like their individual sports sciences is also a route to go that we have people that come and help us out. Those are the 2 primary. Every so often there's someone from like business analytics, stuff like that. But most typically it's sport management and sports sciences. And then the PhD student, which is now Sachin, a ton of, we'll talk soon we'll talk about all of the technology that we use. So historically, strength and conditioning is, gosh, it came from football coaches that realized if our athletes are stronger, we're going to be more successful on the field. So therefore, it was a football coach that would then, be in the weight room, get guys lifting, getting them stronger. As time has moved on, clearly that's extremely helpful for all student athletes. Any sport, the stronger you are, the more robust your body is going to be, the better you're going to perform. So hence why that has kind of built itself out and then branched out as well into a ton of monitoring things. So yes, being strong fixes a lot of things. The stronger you are, the better you are, typically. But paying a little bit more attention to how stress is applied on the body and when injuries, illnesses happen, all of those types of things is an area that we focus on. With that, so sometimes at this institution, we handle all of these things. If you are somewhere else, it might be sports medicine that handles these types of things. Somewhere else, it might be a particular department of sports sciences where they have their own. We need to collaborate and work together to be able to provide all of the services that I'm touching base on at this point. So myself, a quick background on myself. So I'm the youngest of 3. I had 2 older brothers. They played soccer, so I just did whatever they wanted to do. Like most athletes in general, your identity gets wrapped up into your sport. So I am a soccer player. If I am playing well, I'm on top of the world. If I'm not playing well, my world is rocked. Like, oh, my self-confidence is down, all of those types of things. So grew up in a small town up in Indiana. At that point in time, I was pretty good. So, you know, my self-confidence, my identity was wrapped up into that. When I was in high school, I tore one ACL, and that rocked my world. Had never pulled a muscle, rolled an ankle, anything like that. In a game, I got hit, and I went down in a season-ending injury with that. It was my athletic trainer that got me back to baseline, and then back to on the path of, I want to play collegiately, I want to play Division I soccer, that's what I want to do. She put me back together, so she was amazing. Kim Stento was who I then wanted to be. So now the way I approach what I do is I want to be the person that I'm grateful that I had, and or the person that I wish I had. Or like, man, I wish someone paid attention to that for me, those types of things. So I wanted to be Mrs. Stento, so I wanted to be an athletic trainer. So I chose Ball State University so I could be a certified athletic trainer, and as well as continue to play soccer. My freshman year, I tore my other ACL, and then I was kind of stuck. I was told you can either continue to play your sport or be an athletic trainer. You can't do the same at the same time and graduate on time. I'm a first semester freshman. I came here to play soccer. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to be, but I know I still want to play soccer. So a part of the talk that was just given about following your passion, what do you really want to do, go that route, everything else will work itself out. Athletic training at that time was a minor, so I could take all of the courses that the major, but I didn't, the observation hours, just all of my own rehab, that stuff didn't count. But the education side of that, my major then became exercise science, and the world of strength and conditioning was open to me. Right when I went to high school, strength and conditioning wasn't a thing. You got on the field, you jogged the lap, you touched your toes, and you played. There was no getting stronger, dynamic warm-up, mobility, agility, those types of things. You just played. So finding out about the world of strength and conditioning was amazing to me, and that's why I started going down that path of like, wow, had I known if I was stronger, then maybe I didn't get injured. Had I known if we program conditioning on these days, if load management, we'll talk about that in a minute here. If we pay attention though to those things, maybe the student athletes are then better off. We talk about playing odds and stacking chips. If we want to win the game, we want to stack the chips in our favor. So all of the things that are our job, stack the chips in the favor of our student athletes being successful, both on the field, academically, in life. That's our job. Eric isn't here out with the sniffles, but Coach Shannon Phillips, I'll let her tell her story.
So, Shannon Phillips, I'm an assistant strength coach here at Florida State. Like Coach E said, I work primarily with volleyball and beach volleyball here at FSU. My background is in the sport of volleyball. I played at a small Division III school back in Pennsylvania where I grew up. After that, I had a similar experience with Elisa, not necessarily with an injury, but with a strength coach of mine that was super impactful as I was kind of coming up through my playing career. And he believed in me more than I ever could believe in myself. And so that kind of encouraged me to get out of my shell. I was really quiet when I was kind of in undergrad. I was not really super assertive or outgoing necessarily. And so, like Coach E said, just following my passion, and I just couldn't deny that strength and conditioning felt like it was for me. And so kind of working through those barriers that I thought existed of, hey, like I have to be able to come into a room and get everyone's attention and control what's going on in the lift sessions and things like that was really overwhelming to me at first, but did a bunch of internships, got a graduate assistantship at Mississippi State where I got my master's in exercise physiology. I did a professional intern position after that at University of Connecticut, And then prior to FSU, I was at Georgia Southern, where I had much smaller staff, bunch of responsibilities, a lot of teams, a lot of athletes, and so just kind of like getting thrown in the fire and just learning on the spot. And then transitioning here to FSU, my responsibilities are narrower but much deeper. So I have about a quarter as many athletes here as I did at my previous job, which allows me to just invest a little bit more in what the individuals need. And it works out really well, because if I have 150 athletes to myself, it's really not that feasible to pay attention to all these different load monitoring things that we'll discuss in a few minutes. Whereas here I can really invest in what makes sense for this person as opposed to this person, and kind of structure what they're doing based on their individual needs.
And my name is Mccourt, so I'm a second-year grad student here in the sport management program. So just a little bit about me. I grew up in Central Ohio, about 45 minutes outside of Columbus. I did my undergraduate at Ohio State University, so I'm a Buckeye for life. So there I studied athletic training. So basically how I got to athletic training, I was just very involved with sports growing up. I was very competitive in track and field. I was a sprinter, so that was something that I took very seriously. However, I suffered an injury similar to Coach E my senior year. So I unfortunately tore my hamstring. That put me out for the rest of my high school career. So I was exposed to athletic training, and similar as to her experience, just left a lasting impact on me. So I knew that I wanted to pursue a career in athletic training because of what my athletic trainer did for me. Although I wasn't able to come back and compete, just the impact that she had on just what it took to come back from that, and just the struggles that other student athletes go through with injury and whatnot. So at Ohio State, I went through the athletic training program, absolutely loved it, met and worked with some incredible people. My senior year, however, I kind of made a switch as to what I wanted to do. So very passionate about athletics and working with the student athlete and giving back to the student athlete, but not necessarily from a sports medicine standpoint. Very passionate about training and lifting, so that's kind of how I got into strength and conditioning. So I knew I still wanted to be very one-on-one and interactive with the student athlete, but more on a performance side of things. So I'll get into my internship experiences later on, but basically I was able to network with those at Ohio State to get into strength conditioning, and that is where I'm at now. So graduate assistant, working primarily with women's cross country and distance, softball, and track and field as well.
And I'm Sachin. So I'm from the sport management department. So unlike most of the strength and conditioning coaches here, my background was not with strength and conditioning, but my interest has been in analytics, and I do have a background in engineering and kinesiology. So when I met Elisa, it was around the same time last year. I was talking to Dr. Pappas about being able to utilize my strengths in any aspect of the sports industry. So it's a bit harder when you're not, when you don't have that experience coming into like a program as an international. So I just wanted to play with my strengths and make sure that becomes useful for any organization. And luckily I was able to meet Elisa, who wanted to expand more into like analytics research with the strength and conditioning as realm. So we got to meet initially, and she got to know my background, and we initially worked on like, she gave me a couple of tasks over the summer to like basically work on, just run some stats, numbers. So I did that, and after the summer I decided that I wanted to do this as an internship to get more hands-on experience with data, and that's how I started working. And initially I started out with soccer, but I've now started working a little bit more with the data from like other sports, other Olympic sports too. I mainly look at like database management for all the different technology that we will talk about a little bit. I do some data visualizations, create different kinds of visualizations, and hopefully in the future be able to apply more advanced data management or data analysis techniques for them.
Okay, we'll take a quick step backward. I realize I didn't actually tell you about my background after high school, or I guess college. So I did my undergrad at Ball State University. I then went to do my master's at Iowa State. From there, I was a graduate assistant in the weight room. I had a very typical experience as a grad student where I had 6 teams that I was directly in charge of, and I was expected to be around for all of the others. So the typical day is you wake up, like you're in the weight room from 6 to 6, and then you would leave, or say 5:30, go to class 6 to 9, try to get stuff done, pull it around again. So I went from being a graduate assistant, was hired on full-time at Iowa State. I was there for 3 years. I had then taken a position at Notre Dame, so I was in South Bend for 11 years, so which is also atypical, to where I came in as an assistant coach, worked my way up. So I started with 6 teams that I was directly in charge of. I left with 2, and as the associate director of strength and conditioning. That's when I came here 5 years ago to take the position as the director here. The reason that I tell you that is the stereotypical strength and conditioning department has few staff members and a ton of student athletes. So as Coach touched on, where she was before, she had 3 times as many student athletes. That's very common. I encourage you all to do just a ton of reflection throughout the day, at the end of each day. What happened? What did you like? What did you not like? What were things that you really appreciated? What things happened that you're like, wow, that sucked? And then be the person that allows things not to suck for other people. So in coming here, part of that is seeing that we have greater resources than Notre Dame for us to be able to do a good job. I appreciate being able to create the environment for our staff to where everybody doesn't have 6 teams. Erica has a couple teams that she's really in charge of, and then the makeup of our staff is each full-time staff member has a graduate assistant that is their right hand. And then anything outside of that, you have the opportunity if you want to come help me out. So if Erica is the right hand of Shannon, but she wants to come out to soccer, come out to soccer. I welcome that. But to where like what is required is much smaller here than it has been other places. But just a little bit of talking of the story of think about what it is that you really want to do and create it. It's possible. It's going to be a ton of work, but it's going to be worth it. Also to touch on, so Sachin is now with us to, again, go back and touch on the point that was made by the speaker before about utilizing your resources, networking and whatnot. If Sachin just cold call reaches out, I am probably not going to respond. I wouldn't have responded. Why I responded to him and how he came to be a part of it is that he has earned the recommendation of Dr. Pappas as well as Craddock, who oddly enough was the individual that was supposed to be giving this presentation. Dear friend of ours also had, I think he got stuck being ill in Texas. But to give you that bit of information of had he not earned that recommendation and had he not asked them, hey, I would like to work with Olympic sports, do you know anybody? They'll put, sure, I'll put, if Dr. Pappas makes the call, great, I will respond, respond, and it will probably happen unless he proved himself. So as he had said, he had a couple responsibilities initially. If he did a good job, great, this continues. If he screwed that up, thanks, but no thanks. But to touch on, use your resources, earn the recommendation, be where your feet are and do a really good job. Be the CEO of whatever task you have, crush it. Other people will recognize it and give their word for you. As well as everybody will go somewhere else. So for Erica to earn her recommendation, Shannon will probably move on somewhere else, as well as your classmates. You guys will all blossom and have your own careers. If you are caring and are helping each other out, your career will advance significantly faster. So I'm going far off topic of strength and conditioning. But all things that matter, and whether you are in strength and conditioning or any bit of professionalism, people will notice your work quality, your work effort, and you'll either be rewarded or not based on that. So what we do, I'll stop talking here and let Shannon talk a little bit more of X's and O's of what our job is.
Yeah, so as Coach E has already hit on, if there's one thing that we hope that you guys walk away from this presentation with, it's that in your mind, you should consider strength and conditioning to be more than just the people who are in the weight room all day, right? We do so much more than that. So what we do, if I could summarize it in one line, right, it's help student athletes perform their best when their best is required. And so for us, that's at the end of season in championship settings, right? So how do we do that? We use scientific evidence-based methods. So like we all hit on, in terms of our educational background, we also have certifications that are required by the NCAA to hold, and we have to upkeep those in terms of CEUs and things like that. So especially the resources that we have here, we have all kinds of technology that are constantly evolving. I don't program what I did in college. I don't say, hey, we ran blah, 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 XYZ when I was playing, so we're just gonna do that now, even though it's 10 years later, right? We're as a science, as a entity, strength and conditioning is progressing and moving so much faster than to do that. So if I did that, it would just be an extreme disservice to our athletes. So kind of going a little bit more into that first point, performing our best when our best is required. So we start really with a needs analysis. So we look at the sport that we're training and we say, what are the key performance indicators? What are going to make these tennis players, volleyball players, beach volleyball players, cross country runners, distance runners, what is going to make that group the most successful? And so from there, then we kind of write out what we call an annual plan. On the next slide, you'll see this word periodization. It's really just a fancier word for planning, right? So we kind of split, you can stay, yeah. We kind of split the year into 4 parts: off season, preseason, in season, and then championship season. So what we do in the off season is not the same as what we're doing in championship season, right? If we want to perform our best, we're going to kind of ebb and flow with the training and the demands of our sport. And so the next piece that kind of goes with that is maximizing availability for each training session and each competition. So it's kind of a cliche statement, your best ability is your availability. If we're constantly injured or fatigued to the point that we can't carry out the training session as it was planned, we're constantly trying to play catch up, and we're never really going to make that progress that we want to make as we get closer to the peak of the season. So scientific evidence-based practices. So like I said, we keep up with science. It's always changing. We're always trying to do things better, smarter, more efficiently. So for us, in terms of strength and conditioning, 2 parts, the strength and the conditioning side. So in terms of strength, it really depends, again, on the demands of the sport. Hypertrophy, strength, power, speed, all of those things, I would argue every athlete needs that at some time of year, right? Soccer players need hypertrophy at a different time of year than track athletes because they compete in different seasons, right? They're a fall sport compared to a spring sport. Injury risk mitigation, right? So that what something that Coach E hit on towards the beginning is that we want to build resilience. We want to be able to withstand the demands of day in, day out, training, practice, lifting, all of those things, and build ourselves up to once we get to that championship season. And then, like I said, periodization. We're not going to do in August what we're doing in May. Regardless of when your competition season is, those things should change over time. The conditioning side, depending on the sport, it's about preparing for the demands or beyond the demands of sport. So if you take, for example, a sport like football, we're not going to necessarily have a training session during the week that's harder than a game. But a sport like volleyball, for example, we are going to train harder than our matches, right? Because if it's the 5th set, it's best of 5, so you have to win 3 sets. If it's the 5th set and it's 15-15 and it's win by 2, how do we handle that, right? So we want to train to where we get there, we know what that feels like, we've been there before, and we know how to kind of execute in those moments where it's kind of winner take all, so to speak. So we want to increase work capacity and then also incorporating speed, agility, quickness. So those kinds of things get into the more sport-specific training. A distance athlete is probably not doing that same type of stuff as a tennis athlete, but at some point, the speed, agility, quickness, it really comes down to being a skill. So we have to teach it. Our athletes have to learn how to do it properly and at a high level.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes, so we'll zip through this stuff. We do a ton of monitoring: vert, catapult, force plates, NordBoard, gym aware. We say that's external, so what is our body able to produce? The loads that are being asked of the body. So vert, indoor volleyball uses this. It is accelerometry based. The individuals wear it on their waistband, and it measures how many jumps, how high, what the impacts are, looking at what is the stress on the body in practices, in games. Catapult is like vert, but for outdoor sports. We use it with our soccer team to look at what are the demands of the game, what are the demands of each drill, to be able to build. Again, as Coach touched on, we want them to play their best when their best is needed. We shouldn't blow them out the day before we have a game. So to say, what is it, Coach, what do you want to do? Technically, tactically, what do you want to work on? Here's how much energy the individuals have, or here's how much of a toll this is going to take. This is how we load our week going into a game. And a game, if we're playing versus a higher caliber team, it might look at the week leading into would look a little bit different than something of maybe an opponent that isn't as high level. Force plates, dual force plates, they are super sensitive scales that our athletes will stand on, jump, land, again looking at how we apply force and how we absorb force through our bodies, and that will allow us to guide what we're doing in the weight room. This person needs to be faster, this person needs to be stronger, to be able to guide what we're doing in any given phase and season. NordBoard, that's looking at posterior chain, hamstrings, right versus left, total ability. It's very important in being able to brake. So if someone is sprinting and having to change direction, it's super important that your body's able to absorb those force, otherwise those joints go further than they should, injuries happen. Gym aware, that is looking at how fast the bar moves. So to say, if we're looking at power, so you can do a hang clean, if you guys know what I'm talking about, you're gonna jump, you're gonna drop, you're gonna catch it. Well, you could do that slowly. So if we're saying we wanna work on power, that bar needs to move fast, so that it just gives automatic feedback. How fast is the bar moving? Erica, if you're doing this hang clean, I want you to move the bar faster than 1.3 meters per second. If she does it and she only gets 1.0, well then it's not fast enough. Take some of the weight off, you're not ready for that weight today, boom, hit, so we're able again to guide our training. Recovery, so something huge that we use, so we touched on the force plates a little bit. Whoop bands, many of our student athletes use them as well as our staff. To look at the readiness on any given day. The information is pulled from HRV and their sleep and resting heart rates, by skin temperature as well as pulse ox. So we've been able, like that, it's been really huge for us to be able to individualize trainings as well as have conversations about the other 22 hours of the day that are with us. We talk about habits of high performance, right? If you are like scrolling through TikTok and watching Netflix till 3 in the morning and you have a 9 a.m. session with us, you're gonna be garbage. Like, so expect to be tired, expect not to feel well. So as I touched on earlier in the conversation, to say we help them by touching on those things. Yes, they are more robust athletes, period. You have more gas in the tank to do any given task, whether that be in the gym, on the field, in the classroom, ability to react to things, to be emotionally stable, right? We've all been tired and hungry and just like lost our minds and started crying, or something that shouldn't really bother you, completely bother you. So we spend a ton of our time talking about habits of high performance, because in that, if we can get that part right, then our sessions in the weight room, you get so much better with the same amount of work that you're doing, as well as if you're injured, all those types of things. Your injuries heal faster if you make better decisions the other 22 hours of the day. So we harp on that like crazy. All of these, so what we have touched on, force plates, videos, but let me get out of the way here. There are 2 plates. Just to show you, we've got a set of these in each of our weight rooms looking at readiness, so we will see how fast they're able to apply force, how they absorb force. If someone, so I'm coming back from a knee injury, if it seems like I'm loading one way or the other, that would be indicative of they're not ready to do said, like the next task. So we are not putting them at risk of injury moving forward. Nordlords? Jim, where's we're just giving you visuals of what it looks like, saying how fast should the bar be moving. The GPS units for soccer, tennis sometimes sits right up in between your shoulder blades. Whoop bands are right on your wrist. The collaboration across the board, extremely necessary to be able to serve our student athletes. So athletic training, nutrition, the Institute of Sports Science and Medicine, we've been able to provide some great things for our student athletes through research initiatives. Quick plug on that with research, as you guys pick up a Shape magazine, a Men's Health, this, that, and the other, particularly on the ladies' side, most research that's done is on middle-aged white males. So when you read that you should do the intermittent fasting diet or this craze or that craze, check who it's on, because it's probably not you. Something I'm passionate about is pushing the needle on female athletes and just the female athletes or the female population, because we get this information and it's not on, like minorities aren't taken into consideration, menstrual cycles aren't taken into consideration, yet it's a big part on how we are able to perform in all areas of life. So the Institute of Sports Science and Medicine has been a big portion of that. As we're using up a ton of time, I would like Erica to talk a little bit about her journey since she's in your shoes, to be able to maybe tell her story that you can relate to just a little bit closer.
Okay, so, we talk about networking all the time, right? So, just an example of that. So I talked about how I did my undergrad experience in athletic training at Ohio State. So, during my time, 5 years there, I was able to connect with everyone on the sports medicine side of things. When I decided I wanted to make the switch into strength and conditioning, I was fortunately exposed to that stuff during my time there. So I was able to reach out to those coaches on staff, talk about my interest in the profession, and from there I did a year-long internship. When I decided I wanted to go to grad school and get a master's degree, I was able to form relationships with the strength and conditioning coaches during my internship. So one of those coaches, Kelly Borges, she is actually an alum of Florida State of this program. She was somebody that I talked to right away. She was like, where do you want to go to school? What are your plans? What do you want to do? I told her I could go anywhere. Being from Ohio, that's all of where I was. I wanted to go somewhere. So I spoke with her. She had mentioned Florida State, told me to reach out to Coach Angeles. Kevin Enchelmeyer, he's another coach on staff who worked with Coach E at Notre Dame. I talked with him. He said, reach out to Coach E. So that's what I did. I reached out to Coach E. I sent her my resume and cover letter. From there, we set up a phone interview and then went into a formal interview, and here I am today. So just really emphasizing the importance of networking. Talk to people, not just within your circle. Expand your network beyond just your specialty. So athletic training for me, strength conditioning, and now I talk with sports nutrition, sports psych every day. So networking is it's incredibly important. So.
And with that, so her coming to and being a part of our team is because she did a great job otherwise. Another individual on our staff, Bailey Victoria, came to us. She came from Iowa. Her coach reached out and said, hey, will you take a look at this kid, maybe give her a chance as an undergrad intern. Again, had she just reached out, we had plenty of interns at the time, I would have said, no thank you, and that would have been the end of that. But because she made an impression on her coach that he took the time to call me up, okay, come on down. She came down and did a phenomenal job. She also went through the sport management master's degree here, of saying like, wow, this is awesome. I want to stick around. I want to continue to learn and grow. Was a GA for us. She then went and took another job Since she did a great job, I will look at whom I've worked with first, our circle. So we had an opening as we went through it. She was the best candidate. We brought her back, and we are very fortunate to have her on our staff now. But had she not earned the recommendation of her coach, had she not come here and earned it herself, she would still be at another institution with a significant larger workload, all those types of things. But just going back to the wherever you are, do your best to earn those recommendations. For us in this realm, and I believe sport coaching is very similar, did you work directly under us where we want to bring you back in an elevated position, or do one of your other references reach out, like one of my trusted colleagues put their name, that came with Shannon being here, same thing, of if someone that I know and trust knows and trusts you, then that will put you in the one pile. When we are doing hirings, we'll do 4 piles. The yes, I'm going to call you. We might call you. We're not calling you. Heck no. There's no way you're qualified for this position. And we'll then go through the piles in that order. If you've already been with us, like worked with someone on our staff, and you've earned their recommendation, or a trusted colleague, you're automatically into the 1 pile. So, and what would automatically get you into the 4 pile is if one of our trusted colleagues would say, this kid's a slap. Like, they don't work hard, they're disrespectful, they're late, all of the things that I'm sure you talk about in your professionalism class. You can earn a positive recommendation just as quickly, if not quicker, a negative one. So just keeping that in the back of your mind. Questions, concerns?
And I would just like to say, like, from being outside of a strength and conditioning perspective, it's about, like, for most of you here, you might not have a strength and conditioning background. You might not have a scientific background, but there's still a lot of opportunities in places that you don't think that are opportunities. And so for that, like, I was focused on trying to utilize my strengths, and I know the word coding might seem daunting. It is scary, sometimes annoying, but it is useful in almost every aspect of every industry these days. And even if you don't want to get into strength and conditioning, you can apply, like, the skills that you learn by handling data. Data is data regardless of where you guys go to. You guys might be social media specialists, work with data there. You guys might be operations. There's analytics and operations, believe it or not, which if used right, it can speed up a lot of different things. So try to, I'm not forcing people to learn coding, but try to have that as a skill, just so you can separate yourself from, like, others, because you're going to be applying to the same position as everyone else. So with that, and, like, use experiences regardless of where they come from, use opportunities regardless of where they come from, because that might lead to something else entirely different that you might want to do in, like, a couple of years.
Guys, give it up for Coach Elisa. Thank you very much for First friend actually does have a question, and it is, what do you guys feel you wish people knew about strength and conditioning that is kind of outside of the common knowledge?
I would say that that it's not just weightlifting. It's not just max effort, screaming in people's faces. There's just so much more that does go into it.
And another student's wondering, if you don't have that recommendation coming, what would be your next recommendation for that student who wants to get their foot in the door?
Volunteer. Shoot an email first, be as professional with that, do your homework, research, call them by the right name. You'd be amazed with how many times I've gotten emails addressing someone else or saying, I would love to come and contribute to University of Florida Athletics. Like, wrong. So that'll automatically get you in the 4 pile. But if you don't hear back, know that typically the strength and conditioning coaches are overloaded doing a bunch of other things. Then call, then show up. like showing that you're persistent, that you actually want to do it and not want us to spoon feed you things, then if you have something, how can you make our job easier? Do it.
And I'll piggyback off of that too. At some point, experience is experience. So don't be afraid to explore other avenues. Maybe it's a Division III level, Division II level, or a smaller Division I level. Especially those kind of positions. There's, like Coach E hit on, there's few staff and lots of athletes. So the more eyes, the better. And just be really open to learning on the fly and just being present, being there, and being dependable when you do get that chance.
And Sam Sheet is wondering, how do you program for each sport while ensuring the sport-specific demands are met?
So we go through an initial battery of testing. As Coach touched on, KPIs, key performance indicators. So what I do with soccer is different than volleyball, but there is base needs to be a healthy individual in sport. So a movement analysis, how do they move? Do they have the range of motion, the ability to control their body in certain areas? On top of that, then, okay, are they strong enough to be able to do X, Y, and Z? So through strength testing, the force plates, the Nord boards that we showed you, the conditioning levels. So again, the conditioning test is different from soccer to volleyball. What cross country would do, significantly different. What do they need to do for their sport? So we test them. They are then put into buckets as far as you need this, you need this, you need this, to where if you were to walk in a room and see everybody lifting, okay, everyone's trying to get stronger, but I might be doing a back squat, you might be doing a split squat, you might be doing a front squat, based on their mobility, their strength, and their ability levels, and what we're trying to get them to.
And I'm curious just about how all of your guys' positions intersect, and how, even though you are with different teams in different sports, how you guys all still work together.
Honestly, I think that really comes back to Sachin's role, because we do different things, but at the end of the day, it's monitoring, recovery, and collaboration, right? So at some point that looks the same, regardless of sport, and that's one thing that, because of the structure that we have with our staff, we have a lot of independence from one another, but it's awesome because I can learn a ton about the force plates, and then chat with Eric, who does a lot with the Nord boards, and say, hey, like, I'm seeing this metric go down, and he might come back with, hey, try getting them on the Nord board, you'll probably see this. And so kind of interacting in terms of, at some point, training is training and stress is stress on the body. And so having a lot of independence, but then also kind of linking back together with different ways that we can implement the data side.
And physically, for the most part, we're crossing paths all the time. Our offices as a whole are in one hallway where we're crossing paths all the time. So we see each other a lot. It's a lot of just time spent together organically. As silly as it is, we all like each other. That's something that is really important to me. Even if you are, like, if Sachin is just crazy good at his job, but he's a jerk of an individual, forget it. I'll take someone that I would rather develop their craft, and they're a wonderful individual, because we are presenting as a team, because we are a team, that we do need each other to lean on each other in different aspects, but I think it helps to physically be in the same spot.
And just one thing that Shannon touched on is like the tools and the technology, the skills, they remain the same regardless of what sport it's. So it's the application that changes. So creating different applications for the same tool is how like the collaboration happens, and seeing that from like a non-sport science perspective, there's a lot of interaction.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank
you.